China's got a pretty significant problem, not to mention their decline in the entire housing market along with the incline in unemployment. Today we're going to be breaking down what everything going on in China means for you as a CSGO investor, along with everything in general. Let's hop on into it. Now before we get too far into it, I want to note that this is not something I've specifically studied for years. There's many people out there, especially on YouTube, a lot of great resources of people who this is their entire job to focus on the Chinese economy and everything going on there. That is not the case here, but because almost 50% of my audience said that 2/3 of CSGO's successes come from China, it's something I figured I should go after. Now this is going to be a very brief and very summarized rundown, but what's going on in China is due to a couple big things. The first one is going to be lowered numbers in the terms of retail sales and industrial numbers. Both of these are down upon where they want them to be, and this is not something major, but once you combine it with the other big factor, which is their entire housing crisis, which is the main factor you're probably going to find online when you're looking into this. It's either going to be that or probably something relating to their zero COVID policy, where they're willing to put so much effort into stopping the spread of COVID that they're willing to take a very significant financial loss because of it. Now there's so many more factors that play into it, but the three main ones are lower numbers, which are what we talked about in retail and industrial, lower housing, which is the decline in their housing, and the third one is their inability to overcome everything to do with COVID. They're still struggling with COVID and their no tolerance lockdown policy, which has been absolutely atrocious for the citizens of China. Now let's talk about the good and the bad, starting here with the subjective good. Now the good thing is a lot of people in China pile their money into housing in terms of the safety net that it is. For the past multiple years, it's been the best place to put your money because it's been the most rapidly expanding part of China. Their income to actually pricing ratio is over 35, which is extremely high in terms of the housing ratio, especially when you got places like the US who sit around 5 and the UK that sits around 8 to 9. This is very important because the Chinese citizens don't have a lot of good options when they're looking to invest their money. They can invest into the Chinese stock market, which is still down 14 years later after the crash in 2008. You compare that to the US market or pretty much any other market out there, you're going to see significant growth from that time, but the Chinese market is still suffering to this date. It's still down from that peak it saw in 2008, which gives not a lot of investor confidence, plus just the overall fact that it's probably significantly slower moving than what we're seeing here in the US. And you combine that being the second most popular investment with the first being housing, that is not going to be a good option for people, and it might be more likely that we see more people in China turning to CSGO skins to invest. We saw it earlier this year with the explosion of a website called Upin898, where Chinese people were picking up CSGO skins as an investment purpose, and then they were lending them out for very cheap because they were having the overall skin itself gain the capital and not specifically the residual that they're going to be getting from the skin. They wanted the investment purpose of that skin, and I believe that renting it out was probably just the gravy on top of it. Now I say this is the very subjective good because obviously you don't want anyone to be in this situation that the Chinese citizens have, where they don't have full control over their money. Some banks are being shut down and they want to have a place that they can store their money where the government's not going to take it. It's an unfortunate situation there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a terrible situation for everyone. If they're able to positively invest into CSGO to a point where they're satisfied with their investment, and overall it's more likely that the items you are invested into as well are going to rise, it might be a win-win for everyone in that situation. Now let's talk about the bad side of this. Now the first thing and the most obvious thing is that Chinese success and CSGO skin success are kind of linked together. We've seen with the past couple years that once China really entered into the CSGO skin scene, the skin scene blew up, and this is obviously no coincidence. Chinese money is a very big and important factor into investing today and the overall success, which is why when something bad like this happens in China, where people are unable to access their money in certain areas and people are projected to lose 30% of their total money or total investment into housing, it's raising raising a lot of concerns for people who are invested into CSGO, because once the Chinese potentially start pulling out of CSGO because they need that money to survive, that could lead to so many detrimental impacts for overall CSGO investing. Now, situations like this are very hard to determine how bad something could actually be. Could we see that a lot of people are just selling off a small amount of their inventory so they have a little extra spending money on hand, or are we going to see everyone liquidating everything because they want that money immediately? The truth is, there's only one thing for certain. We know this is going to impact the CSGO market in one way or another, and most likely that's going to be something more negative than positive. The problem is, we don't know if that's going to be a 2% downturn, which I'm sure everyone would be fine with at this point considering how bad it could potentially get, or are we talking about something that could be 50 to 75 to 90% downturn, or pretty much the crash of CSGO skins? Now, talking about what's most likely to happen in my opinion, well, it's very hard to break down, like I mentioned, what specifically could happen, but there's a couple main outcomes I could see. First up, the thing is, a lot of people that spend a lot of money on CSGO are definitely going to be impacted by something like this, but I don't think it's to the extent that most people realize. If you're able to go down and spend a significant amount of money on pixels in a video game, I don't think that eating is probably going to be your most likely concern. Even if we see something extremely dangerous with their housing market or just their overall financial or economic market in the moment, odds are the people that are able to invest a significant amount of money into CSGO are not the people that are going to be struggling immediately when that happens. Now, if this is something that progresses to a couple year long recession in China, there's definitely the possibility once that happens. But at least at this point, the majority of the people that are buying into CSGO that are also living in China are not too worried about feeding themselves. Now, they might sell off some of their items because they can, but it's not most likely going to be because they need to. Now, I want to make a very big point. This is just my personal opinion on the matter. I'm not living in China. I don't know directly how everything is, and those people might want to sell off their CSGO skins just for the peace of mind, and you might want to do the same as well. Personally, I'm not going to be taking any action today because I think there's definitely going to be a time where we're going to see if it gets better or worse, and I'm going to make my decision then. At this point, I'm not making any specific decisions based on this information, especially considering I think CSGO's got a lot better ahead of it than it does bad things ahead of it. This is probably the major issue it has ahead of it, whereas there's so many positive things I can see in the future. The biggest thing I want to leave you with today is the idea that a lot of people in China have a significant amount of problems, but it's disproportionately affecting those who have little to no income. And this is very important because these are not the CSGO players most people are concerned with. These are not the CSGO investors we're concerned with. We're concerned with the ones that have a significant amount of capital because they have the power to not only manipulate the market, but also put a lot of terror onto the market. And I don't think this overall event is going to be affecting those people that much to the point where we're going to see a very big collapse because of it. Now, that's just my personal opinion on the matter, and I definitely suggest you check out a little bit more about this. I am not the most informed person when it comes to this, like I've mentioned, and it's a really interesting topic. But that is really all I have for today, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.